Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Hannah's Books. Yet again, I'm coming to you with a tag meant for celebrating on Tag Tuesday, despite the fact that I'm yet again running a bit late. Today's tag is the Last 10 Books tag, initially created by Mark Nash back in 2018 and very recently refurbished by Reiner at Rainier Books. I love how he's found a couple of great older tags and put them back into circulation recently. Reiner was kind enough to tag me, so let's jump right in. The first prompt: what is the last book you didn't finish? I was scheduled to buddy read Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man with Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics back in July, I think. Invisible Man is a book my son counts as one of his very favorites, and which my spouse also finds very meaningful. It was a hard month for me during a hard year. As many of you know, I haven't read much fiction since the pandemic began, as weird as that is for me, and the level of violence and pain in the first chapter of Invisible Man had me in tears. I asked Alan if we could put it off a bit, and he was very kind in his response. Well, the time to pick it up again has arrived, and we'll be getting started near the end of the month. And I'm really glad that I'll not only be reading a book my father loved and that my son and husband love, but that I will get the chance to read it with Alan. Number 2. What's the last book you reread? I've just been reading Anthony Trollope's The Warden, the first book in Trollope's Barsetshire series. I first read it just a few years ago, but for a variety of reasons I didn't continue in the series at that time. But this is going to be the year, I think, to go forward. Anthony Trollope and I share a birthday, and maybe that's why I feel an affinity for his works, even though I haven't read many of them yet. When I first read it, I adored The Warden, far more than most people do, although I've now found quite a number of you who love it too. Many readers think of it as a kind of light introduction to a wonderful series, but I was totally charmed by it all by itself. The story follows an unlikely hero, a quiet 60-year-old man who comforts himself by playing air cello as he wrestles with his communities and his own moral thinking and actions. I was especially intrigued by Trollope's engagement with the Victorian tradition of novels of reform from authors like Charles Dickens and Elizabeth Gaskell in this quiet small-town novel. In a way, Trollope is being satirical or even critical, but at the same time, we really get to know someone who's trying to grapple with what the right thing to do might actually be. This time around, I listened to the audiobook version narrated by Simon Vance, and I was just as pleased by The Warden going through it this time around. I probably will start the next in the series sometime in March. The next book I plan to reread is similarly slim, and interestingly, while it's a book that sounds like it was meant for me, I found it quite disappointing when I read it years ago, kind of another strange time in my life, and that's Elizabeth Gaskell's Cranford. I have high hopes that I might appreciate it quite a bit more this time around, partly because some of my favorite BookTube readers have talked about it in such glowing terms, and partly because I'm getting the chance to read it with a few of the amazing women of BookTube: Roz at Scallydangling About the Books, Sarah at Hardcover Hearts, and Kim at Middle of the Book March. The third prompt: name the last book you bought. I bought Joseph O'Malley's Great Escapes from Detroit, which I ordered after hearing Toutat-Lautrec read a bit of it. I haven't read it yet, but I'm really looking forward to diving in. That's the last book I purchased, but not the last book I acquired. In addition to library books, which flood into our house on a regular basis, I've recently acquired quite a few review copies from publishers, books I'm currently reading and writing about. I'll be talking here on BookTube very soon about Richard Green's The Unquiet Englishman, a biography of the novelist Graham Greene, and my written review is already up on Open Letters Review, and I'll link to that below. Question number 4. What is the last book you said you read, but didn't? I don't claim to read things I haven't read, but I certainly have made mistakes before. Not terribly long ago, I said I had read All the President's Men when I was younger, but of course what I had really read was Robert Penn Warren's All the King's Men. And although I don't remember what it is, I know the reverse happened fairly recently, that I swore I'd not read something, that when I started, I remembered quite clearly. To be honest, I don't travel in a circle now where anyone assumes I've read things, but I did for a little while. I've mentioned before on this channel that I went to high school in South Carolina in a particularly anti-intellectual area, and I studied very little literature in my school compared to what my college friends had studied in their schools. I attended a rigorous college outside the South, and all my peers seemed to have read thousands of books I had not even heard of. As we were getting to know each other, we asked a series of questions. What's your name? What dorm do you live in? What do you think you might major in? And then, what's your favorite book? From there, the conversations invariably went to, have you read whatever? That last question was meant not as a test, but as a polite way to bring up books without acting like other people were inferior if they hadn't read the books. Nevertheless, a tremendous number of my new college friends had read all the books other people were mentioning. And over I was saying, no, but that sounds fascinating. Well, one day, as we were walking down the urban streets around campus and passed by a group of Hare Krishnas, one man in a saffron robe held out a book and called to us, "Have you read the Bhagavad Gita?" I was a small-town southerner, introverted, but still a southerner, and talked to random people in the street as comfortably as I talked to my roommates. I was so stunned to think my answer to a "have you read it" question could be in the affirmative that I immediately lit up and grinned and excitedly said, "Yes!" My sophisticated northern urban-minded people, who didn't talk to strangers or even wave at every car that passed by them while they were walking in the streets, were horrified and dragged me away before I started asking the guy in the saffron robe if he liked Eudora Welty. Anyway, what I learned in those first few weeks of college was that telling people I hadn't read a book didn't seem to make people think less of me. But telling people I had read a book, even when I had read it, sometimes did. Next up, what is the last book you wrote in the margins of? What book have I not written in the margins of? I make very light pencil dots in the margins of library books. I even underline and make notes when I'm reading the newspaper. The sixth prompt is to name the last book you had signed. This one's sort of bittersweet since the pandemic has definitely put readings and book signings on hold for a while. I'm not sure what the last book I had signed was, but the ones that are most important to me are the ones my father signed to me. His first real book came out when I was at the tail end of high school, and that book was released in a special 25th anniversary edition not too many years before he died. Those two books, both signed, have pride of place on my bookshelves. Question number 7. What is the last book you lost? This is a really weird thing, but I've lost 2 books about observant Jewish feminists. For those of you who don't know, I too am a Jewish feminist, but I'm completely secular. One of these 2 books I left in the back of an airplane pocket, maybe a dozen years ago, and it was a library book, Tirzah Firestone's With Roots in Heaven. Firestone was raised Orthodox, left Judaism for a while, and then returned to a new kind of practice, becoming a rabbi herself. I was totally absorbed in the book, in the plane, and I was really looking forward to completing it while we were visiting my husband's family for a few days. After trying to track it down through the airline, I wound up paying so much for the lost copy that I just abandoned the project when I realized that the only way to get another copy was to purchase one. The other book I lost was a copy I had acquired from a friend. and must have left in a cafe or something. And it's a somewhat similar book, Life on the Fringes by Haviva Ner David, who studied for ordination with an Orthodox rabbi in Israel. In this case, I tracked down a library copy of the book afterwards and was able to finish it. If this is your kind of subject, and I think I have one booktube friend who might think this is her kind of subject, and that is Courtney Ferreter, these are both really interesting books. Number 8. What was the last book you had to replace? Quite recently, I bought a used copy of the charming little book by Alan Bennett, The Uncommon Reader, about Queen Elizabeth II, checking out books from a mobile library. I initially read my own library's copy, which seemed appropriate when it first came out in 2007 or so. But after I read it, I quickly bought one for my own shelves. And before I actually put it up there, I realized that it would be a perfect holiday gift for my mother. I've checked it out a time or two from the library since then, but when I tried to put it on hold late last December, it was no longer in the collection. So I ordered a copy which was only delivered a week or two ago. Why was I looking for it right then? As I was planning my annual New Year's Day reading of Helene Hamp's 84 Charing Cross Road, inspired by Sarah at Hardcover Hearts, I decided that Alan Bennett's little book, as well as one of Anne Fadiman's collections of bookish essays, would be wonderful additions. I did not prepare enough this year, but I think I may be adding those when 2022 rolls around. And the final question, what is the last book you couldn't get hold of? Well, I've been looking for affordable copies of Helene Hamp's writings about New York City. To say I can't get a hold of them is not quite true, but in my 2 or 3 recent online searches, the book I am especially interested in always seems to cost a bit more money, especially for the condition of the copies I'm finding, than I'm prepared to pay. I'm in no hurry, and I'm borrowing Steve Donahue's idea that his glorious hometown used bookstore will provide, and hoping that the universe will provide sometime when I can troll around in used bookstores again. All that's left is to tag a few people. One of the beautiful things about this tag is that it can easily be repeated, since a person's particular answers will be changing all the time. And I want to encourage all of you to do it if you haven't answered it fairly recently. I'll explicitly tag all the people I've mentioned so far in this video. First, I should say that I mentioned Roz as scally-dambling about the books in this video, but I'm not tagging her since she has just done a great version of this tag, although I'm worried that she never writes in her books. I will tag 2 Tight-Lautrec, Steve Donahue, Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics, Courtney Ferreter, Kim at Middle of the Book March, and Sarah at Hardcover Hearts. And I'd also love to see Mark Nash do a refurbished version of his own tag too. Well, thanks Mark for creating this tag initially, and thanks Reiner for putting it back into circulation and for tagging me. I'm off to do a bit of reading now, probably curled under the blankets with a cup of tea on this cold and cloudy day. Thanks for joining me here on Hannah's Books. See you soon.